Hey everyone, we are CITYDATA.ai. We are here today to talk about the University Council. What is the University Council? The Council is a public, private, and academic advisory board created to add executive perspective and insight into the data needs and use cases of cities, counties, and municipalities around the world. Today, we will be chatting with a very special guest from Indonesia, Okkie Putriani, or Bu Okkie. She's a lecturer in civil engineering from the University of Atma Jaya, Yogyakarta, and her focus is statistics, surveying, entrepreneurship. She's also pursuing a doctoral program in civil engineering with an emphasis on big data and in the field of transportation. I've had the pleasure of working with Buoki on mobility and transportation projects, research projects run by the government of Indonesia, the Ministry of Transportation, also known as the MOT, as well as projects from the United Nations Pulse Lab in Jakarta, Indonesia. So welcome, Buoki, to the University Council. We are very happy to have the opportunity to chat with you today. And also with us today is Bu Ruwie, who is the managing director of QBI Indonesia. QBI is our affiliate partner in Southeast Asia, and they're doing some awesome work in Indonesia at the moment. So welcome, Bu Ruwie, as well to today's podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mr. Apu. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for asking. I hope both of you are doing well. If you wouldn't mind me asking you, where exactly are you located at the moment? If you could give us a little bit of feel about where you are and what time is it there? I think it would be great for our audience to know that.
I live in Yogyakarta, Mr. Apu. It's far from Jakarta, if in Indonesia. It's around 7-8 hours from Jakarta, if using cars. And today in Indonesia, right now, is 11:35 morning.
Yeah, I'm based in Jakarta. Like Bu Okkie said, it's a bit distance, like 8 hours journey from Jakarta to Jogja. I'm older than you, Apu, by half a day. Put it that way.
Oh.
Hai Bu Okkie, terima kasih tadi dari perkenalan Apu terkait Bu Okkie dan background Bu Okkie, dan saya sebenarnya sebagai Indonesian people juga yang sangat passionate terhadap big data dan geospatial. Bu Okkie saya ketemu juga karena saya lihat passion ibu ya terhadap big data dan data mobilitas dan posisi ibu di akademia juga luar biasa ya sebagai pengajar di Atma Jaya University, kemudian sekarang mempersu doktoral level di UGM. Saya sangat-sangat menghargai waktu ibu saat ini untuk bisa join podcast kita.
Terima kasih Bu Ruwie. Ini sebuah privilege atau sebuah kebanggaan tersendiri bisa satu frame dengan Bu Ruwie dan Mr. Apu, of course.
So let's start with a few questions for you, Bu Okkie. We are in a very interesting situation around the world. The US has its own share of problems with COVID, but so do many of the other countries worldwide, especially the countries with very large and dense populations like Brazil, India, Indonesia. And so we've all been through a lot, both personally and professionally over the past 12 or 14 months, or perhaps even longer in some places. What have been your experiences? What are some of your biggest internal and external lessons that you've learned in 2020?
2020 is very challenging here because it is very unexpected conditions that we never expect before, right? There is a good news and a bad news. The good news is we have an extra power for challenge the situations, but the bad news somehow we not prepare enough for facing these situations because it is not one only impact but multi layers impact on that. And what I have learned from 2020, if we have to learn about new things fast because the technology is already fast. But what about the human resource? What about the infrastructures and etc.? That's why we need to catch up. That is the lessons that I got in 2020. But for the external lessons itself, we have to prepare plan A, plan B, plan C, even plan D in the real our life, because we cannot expect in one possibilities, but we have to think about if what happened in A situations, we have to do the B and the C.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I think every letter in the alphabet, we need a plan all the way from A to Z, the way the world is evolving right now. So as we start to bounce back, we're going to have a whole new set of challenges because now it is a whole new world. Since you are so heavy into civil engineering and transportation and transit projects, what are some of the challenges you see in those areas as the economy starts to open up again?
In 2018, a Ph.D. program in using big data. If we're talking about transportations, it's not only about the road, not only about the cars or the buses, but we also think about the mobility itself. The keywords is pentahelix. We use ABCGM solutions, Mr. Apu. A is the academic, because the calculations can get from the academic, and B is the business, the businessmen, the stakeholders for help the situations. C is we involve the community, because we thought that maybe the public transport or transportations will be ignored by people because all of the things can be done in-house. And fourth is G, the government. We need the government support about the situations, be that about the roads, about the services and other things. And the last one is M, media. We need the media for give the information, the latest information for bring not only transportations, because the health factor and etc. can be integrated in one solutions, something like that.
Oh, very interesting. I was not familiar with that acronym, ABCGM.
GM. It's called
Super interesting.
pentahelix.
Yes. When you work with different government agencies, how do they use data? Do they have a well thought out and a coordinated data strategy in your government?
Luckily for me, I live in Yogyakarta. It's like a small Silicon Valley in Indonesia, because all creative people, all creative young people live in Yogyakarta, and they use like co-working space and other things for making a startup, for using the data and all of the things, and it working with the government in Yogyakarta. They produce some websites that can provide one-stop service for governments. Let's say we have Jaga Jogja. It's called that website that we have if we have issues for our license or our problems, it can be solved in that one. We have a website also for open source data for government in Jogja. But in the other province in Jogja, like say Surabaya have a good smart city concept that the traffic, the disasters can be connected to the government directly, and the government services can solve directly on the spot. And also Jakarta, because Jakarta is the main city in Indonesia.
I see. Very interesting. Do universities also partner with the government and collaborate on data in Indonesia?
That is a very interesting questions, Mr. Apu. Me, myself, I can know you and Bu Ruwie is because of the government. Me as academic, I have a research in my Ph.D. talking about big data. I think that I cannot solve it is with me myself only. I have to collaborate with the other academics. So that's why I am from Gadjah Mada University. I contact Mr. Edwan Santoso from Institut Teknologi Bandung. He helped me a lot, and he introduced me. He and his team and also me get invited to the Ministry of Transportation. And in the time, the Ministry of Transportation has a problem because if I tell you a little bit story, in Indonesia, in Transportation, Ministry of Transportation, we have ATTN, Asal Tujuan Transportasi Nasional. In English, some like origin destinations, national transportations, some like that. This is annually survey that not annually, biannually, because for the year is talking about the passengers mobility, and the second year is talking about logistics, and it's switched every year. And previously, when we used that data, we survey manually. We came to the houses, we came to the roads, we do the very traditional way. After that, in 2016, 2017, we started using telco data. But the problem is the telco data not give the data that we want. If we only use one providers in Indonesia, it's also not provide the actual data for the real situations. Now, and because of that, in 2018, we starting finding out, and luckily for us, because my working together with the ministry, the government, we're looking for the best provide big data itself. We contact Google, we contact Facebook, we contact other providers, and I met you, Mr. Apu, and contact you via email, and you give the contact with Bu Ruwie, and it shows that like your questions, how government and academic can collaborate at once.
That's awesome. I do remember how you found us and reached out to us, and we are very grateful and thankful that you found us. I would say, though, that historically telcos have not had very granular data, very detailed data. So the data was mostly at a 1 kilometer resolution or 1.5 kilometer resolution, which is not sufficient to make good inferences. It's not useful for very deep machine learning and data science. But that is changing. And so it is my hope that as telcos upgrade their networks, as telcos get to 5G around the world, the data improves, and even the telcos hopefully will be able to provide highly granular data, which can be complementary to the data that companies like CITYDATA, and there are others like CITYDATA that provide such mobility data. It's my hope that telco data will someday complement what we do.
You know, your question actually very much reflect like the global landscape of how, you know, geospatial mobility data is working. And I think Bu Okkie, I'm actually how to say it, flattered that you actually came to us and, you know, being truthful about how government actually needs, you know, this private sector helps. And I mean, I'm hoping that, you know, both yourself as a practitioner and expert in your field, you see that the utility of the data can be very versatile, and it actually become integral part of you know, troubleshooting or even come up with solution, policy making. How do you feel like if you want to purchase or acquire data, would you be comfortable in you know, the crowdsourced type of data, or is it more a highly privacy compliant data? How do you see the data source becoming critical decision making in to acquire data? I mean,
when we use big data for our information, because Mr. Apu and you, Bu Ruwie, have involved in the big data, so for the ethics is no problem, but data security, that is actually the problems in Indonesia. When we talk about smart city, we cannot talk about that is smart because it's very fragile, because data can be stolen easily, not only from one source, but a lot of sources. If we're talking about crowdsourced data, we have to know details, the ethics first, because we have to know about the personal identifiable information and other things. Besides that, after we know that rules, crowdsourced data can solve a lot of problems. Transportation is not only, like I said before, not talking about road or the buses or etc., but also the quality of air, the noise levels. We use those data for calculating how many public transport that will exist in one city. So crowdsourced data is very useful and very promising future for us.
There is a census survey that is conducted every 10 years or every 5 years. Most countries do it every 10 years, and that's the major survey, the major census. And then some countries do a mini census every 5 years. In the US, they have a system called the ACS, the American Community Survey. And that's the micro survey, which is done every 2 years. They're trying to do it every year now. How is census run in your country? And when was the last census? And when do you think the next census might be? And how is that progressing? How is that evolving?
Okay. The last census in Indonesia is around 2017. And it will be calculated in 4 until 5 years, every 4 or 5 years. And the data is very important for us, for me as a researcher and the lecturer, and also the Ph.D. student. Why? In transportation engineering, there is 4 stat models when we talk about transportations. The first one is about trip generations, and the second one is the trip distributions, and the third is about split models, and the fourth one is about trip assignment. If we talk about the second step is about trip distributions, we're talking about later on origin destinations matrix. We also make a predictions about what happened in 2 years ago, the next 2 years, or the next 5 years, or even the next 10 years, if we want to make a calculation for a new cities or a new resident for the transportation calculations. Census 2020 or census data is very promising, and we can wait about this latest news about the census itself.
Yes, I am just as excited as you are, and we are eagerly waiting for census, the latest census in Indonesia. Because when you take census data and you combine it with mobility data, we've seen some very powerful combinations and correlations that can be produced. So we are really looking forward to seeing the latest results from the census. What is your view or your definition of a smart city? What cities in your country do you think are going to get there quickly?
If we're talking about smart cities, I agree. If we ask 5 people, maybe we'll have 5 answers about smart cities. Because for my opinion, there is 3 parts, important things, when we're talking about smart cities. The first one is the human resource. We cannot say it is smart when the human resource is bad or the human resource is low, because when the technology is already on that place, but the people cannot use that technology, it's not smart. The second one is about the system or the management, because it shows that it will help, but it has a system, not only the technology itself. And the third one, the infrastructure. So for me, the three parts, if we want to make smart cities can be applied in the city. And when we're talking about smart cities, it's not only the technology, but also the integrations about all of the things about transportation, water supply, about health information, about the housing, about etc. We're talking about smart. It's talking about integrations. In Indonesia, we have Surabaya, because the previous major, she has important, she had extraordinary innovations for smart cities. And we have Jakarta, because the Jakarta is the main city in Indonesia. And also, yeah, I can answer Yogyakarta, because this is promising, because I see a good progress in that. And also the big cities in Indonesia, because the uniqueness of Indonesia is not like United States. United States is one country in one place. But Indonesia is archipelago countries, in archipelago island. So there is a remote problems can be held in every island in Indonesia. So that is our challenges, how to connect with smart city, connected to other cities, something like that.
I'm really hopeful that many of our cities will be making good progress towards becoming smarter and using technology in responsible ways to make the lives of their citizens better over the next few years.
Jadi tadi seperti kita udah membahas ya Bu, banyak hal tentang big data, tentang smart city, tentang utilitas atau aspek security, privacy. Tapi ada satu aspek yang saya mau tanya Bu, terkait dengan peran wanita nih, yang mungkin menjadi salah satu topik yang bisa diperdebatkan atau dipertanyakan gitu, karena nggak banyak loh Bu wanita yang main atau berkancah lah di bidang big data atau di teknologi atau di government technology itself, karena predominan adalah laki-laki lah. Kita masih dengan kultur itu sih ya Bu ya. Tapi saya sangat mengerti dan appreciate kalau mungkin Ibu ada point of view yang berbeda terkait peran wanita di dunia teknologi dan big data ini.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Ruwie. Bagi saya, wanita itu ada singkatannya. Kalau istilahnya we talking about woman itu Bu, di wanita itu kan kalau bahasa Inggris ada women, W atau O, women ya kan. W itu workaholic, singkatan dari workaholic. Jadi katakanlah ya seorang wanita tuh di mana saja harus workaholic gitu. Kemudian O itu organizing. Jadi wanita tuh kadang dituntut untuk bisa merorganize semuanya gitu. Dan organize, M-nya juga harus punya kemampuan marketing Bu. Ya kan, nggak sih gitu. Dengan marketing dalam arti luas, jadi bukan hanya pemasaran pekerjaan, tapi ya dari networking, kemudian dari dia bagaimana bersikap dengan orang lain itu akan dinilai. Kemudian entrepreneur. Jadi perempuan itu wanita Indonesia dan semua dimanapun Anda berada harus punya jiwa entrepreneur gitu. Jiwa entrepreneur itu apa sih gitu? Jiwa entrepreneur itu adalah lebih ke pada saat ada peluang, ya take it or leave it gitu. Jadi kalau pada saat ada kesempatan itu diambil. Dan N-nya sebenarnya menjawab yang tadi, ada networking. Jadi itu pedoman yang saya dapatkan dari Pak Hermawan Kertajaya. Sewaktu saya SMP Bu Ruwie, itu saya baca di situ, saya baca buku, wah ini menginspirasi nih. Dan itu saya bawa sampai hari ini. Dan tadi bila Bu Ruwie menanyakan ke saya, kenapa wanita belajar big data? Ya kenapa tidak? Jadi maksudnya boundaries kita antara pria dan wanita itu saya menyampaikan memang secara biologi kita berbeda dan ada pekerjaan yang memang dominan laki-laki dan dominan di perempuan baik secara fisik ataupun secara kemampuan. Tapi itu tidak bisa membatasi dari istilahnya value ataupun value yang kita mau capai. Nah, di situ itu ada 2 poin Bu Ruwie bagi saya. Jadi ada yang namanya kemauan dan kemampuan gitu. Apabila kita merasa mampu tapi kita tidak mau mewujudkan baik dalam big data atau apapun ya nggak bisa. Tapi kalau kita bicara kita mau tapi kita tidak mampu ya juga tidak akan terlaksana. Itu sudah menjawab belum Bu untuk pertanyaan yang
spiritnya ada sih Bu, karena balik lagi ini lebih ranah teknologi atau data, memang mungkin sesuatu yang stereotyping perempuan agak sulit karena kita lebih apa ya, kalau kita bilang multi thinkers gitu kan, susah untuk fokus. Tapi bagi saya itu merupakan challenge juga Bu Okkie, yang tadi dibilang kalau ada kemauan. So the saying in bahasa is if there's the will, there's a way. So this is what we are talking about in bahasa, bahwa if we are willing to bring upon what we can sebagai as a woman, that is something to be far more valuable in our own appreciation to gain what we needed in our lives. Apa namanya, civic engineering in transportation. Aspirasi dan ambisi Ibu sendiri untuk this area untuk 5 tahun ke depan seperti apa sih Bu?
Ya, baik Bu Ruwie. Saya melihat begini, 2018 saya sudah katakanlah berinisiatif untuk mengambil big data sebagai topik penelitian saya. Dari sebuah niat itu tidak ada yang membayangkan saya bisa 2020, 2021 bisa berkomunikasi, berinteraksi sejauh ini dengan salah satunya City Data seperti yang hari ini. Nah, ternyata rencana itu akan membantu kita apabila kita good willing akan bisa didapat. Maksudnya ada hal-hal baik yang lebih dibandingkan kita ekspektasi di awal. Nah, bila bertanya 5 tahun ini mau kemana gitu ya, saya ini sekarang 2021, tentunya pencapaian pusat saya adalah menyelesaikan disertasi saya. Sebagai pribadi itu tanggung jawab saya. Kemudian di 2021 ini saya mengenalkan big data untuk civil engineering atau untuk teknik sipil ke universitas saya. Jadi katakanlah itu juga bukan usaha yang mudah. Jadi katakanlah tidak hanya menggerakkan ke mahasiswa, tapi juga ke para dosen. Nah kemudian 2002-2003 saya ingin merangkul untuk menjadikan pusat studi big data di Universitas Atma Jaya Yogyakarta. Karena sebenarnya semua prodi di universitas kami itu sudah ada beberapa bagian yang sudah mulai melakukan penelitian tentang big data. Tapi let's say seperti informatika, manajemen, kemudian teknobiologi, itu sedikit banyak sudah hukum, itu sudah tahu tentang big data. Tetapi apabila kita bisa merangkul ini sebagai pusat studi big data secara khusus, kan akan memberikan impact yang tidak hanya bermanfaat bagi internal kampus kami, tetapi kan juga bisa menjawab kebutuhan masyarakat sekitar. Gitu Bu Ruwie.
Wow, itu aspirasi yang luar biasa Bu. Saya setuju dan CITYDATA dan CITYDATA pasti akan support. Dan saya terima kasih waktu itu diundang untuk memberikan sedikit intro terhadap Big Data di Atma Jaya. Hopefully mungkin kedepannya kita lebih banyak lagi Bu kolaborasi. Dan Bu Okkie just expresses her ambition and aspiration for the 5 years to come in terms of her personal goals as well as academic goals as well.
Thank you so much, Bu Okkie, for spending this time with us today and for sharing your perspectives, sharing your experience, sharing your stories, and your learnings with us. Bu Ruwie as well, thank you for being with us today and for asking your questions and sharing your viewpoints as well. It's been a pleasure.